Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is from the CBN. I'm William Isidada. The gross domestic product, GDP, is the total monetary or market value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific time period. According to Investopedia, it functions as a comprehensive scorecard of a given country's economic health. Today on the program, we'll take a look at Nigeria's exit from economic recession in the last quarter of last year, CBN Governor Mr. Godwin Emefiele's visit to the National Assembly, and more. So let's dive right into it. I've seen different headlines in the past few days talking about Nigeria's latest GDP figures as released by the National Bureau of Statistics, showing that the country's GDP grew by 0.11% in the last quarter of 2020. Bloomberg's headline, for instance, read, Africa's largest economy unexpectedly exits recession. Many national newspapers and TV analysts also shared similar sentiments. But for keen economic watchers and those who listened to the CBN Governor Mr. Godwin Emefiele while he explained to journalists during the November NPC press briefing about his cautious optimism on Nigeria's exit from recession, it wasn't a surprise, neither was it unexpected. So let's listen again to how he reiterated it at the January NPC briefing.
You said that I was, in November NPC, that I was cautiously optimistic and was I was cautiously optimistic that that fourth quarter GDP will be positive, thereby taking Nigeria out of recession, but that I was aggressively optimistic that during the first quarter that we will exceed recession. I'm praying very seriously that my prayers should be heard, because I know that people are waiting to put my neck on the chopping board to say that I don't know my work. But let me say this, that I'm saying this out of what we've seen. Okay? The recession or the health crisis from the pandemic and the global crisis that we've seen, right, in different countries, right, and their recovery process we've seen a V-shaped curve. V-shaped curve. That is a big shock, comes down and goes up. That's what we've seen. And we do not think, with what we are doing, in both monetary and fiscal authorities are doing, we do not think Nigeria will be an exception. And I can provide data for you. For instance, you will all recall that Nigeria started growing in GDP. Output was growing positively, gradually, albeit low, because as long as output is lower than population growth, we don't consider that very good. But it was growing until pandemic struck around February. Nigeria's first quarter GDP, I will use the word, was pleasantly positive, whereas those of other economies were negative, right? So Nigeria was positive in Q1, US, Britain, Europe, all of them were negative in Q1. They were negative in Q2. Nigeria hit the first contraction in Q2. Then in Q3, those economies moved up into positive territory. So Nigeria moved further down into negative territory during Q3. So we're also saying in the same direction, if they came out after 2 quarters, because it's a V, a shock, and a recovery, that we believe, all things being equal, given everything that we have done, both by the monetary and fiscal authorities, we should also come out. So that so it's good for me to explain it so that people understand my reasoning, why I felt that I was cautiously optimistic in the fourth quarter, but aggressively optimistic for the first quarter of 2021.
The non-oil sector contributed significantly to Nigeria's economic rebound as growth in agriculture and telecommunication made up for a sharp drop in oil production. The CBN has consistently supported the key non-oil sectors while advocating for economic diversification. Mr. Emefiele said the Monetary Policy Committee will continue to focus on that going forward.
The core mandate of monetary policy is price and monetary stability as well as exchange rate stability. But given the stagflationary environment that we find ourselves today, where inflation is accelerating very fast and output growth is decelerating and contracting, monetary policy said yes, we will continue our price and monetary stability mandate, but that must be conducive to growth, because you need to see positive growth in our economy as well as inflation. They must come together. So we'll be looking more at growth, and what are some of the targeted policies we'll be looking at. Like we said, we'll be looking aggressively at what can we do to put in place measures that will stimulate consumer spending, that will ultimately also lead to more facilities for manufacturing companies to agri companies, so that this will help to create employment, stimulate manufacturing output, and positively impact on our GDP. Like I said earlier, for instance, on our targeted household facilities, we have already disbursed 192 billion to 426,016 beneficiaries out of the 300 billion naira that is earmarked. So that means there is still room, and we are willing to do more of this. The AXMIS facility so far was 106.96 billion to 27,946 beneficiaries, and we are willing to do more. Of course, under our Anchor program, we have cumulatively disbursed about 500 billion. But even then, we have close to almost 3 million smallholder farmers that have benefited from our various initiatives under the Anchor program, where we have cultivated nothing less than 21 agricultural crops in the country, providing seeds, providing fertilizer, providing other inputs that is needed to improve the yield of agricultural output in Nigeria, so that prices can be low. We have also done healthcare. So far, 72 billion has been disbursed to 73 projects, and we're willing to do more. Our initial target, I would say, is 100 billion, but as we see more optimism from companies, I believe we will do more. We also set aside about 1 trillion naira to support some agricultural and manufacturing companies. So far, just only 457 billion has been drawn. All we can say is that the manufacturing companies who want to expand their plants and should take advantage of this low interest facility committed for 10 years for them to be able to expand their plants, grow their manufacturing output, create jobs for Nigerians, and place them in a solid and competitive environment to be able to do a good job as we move into the AFCFTA. Of course, we've talked about what we are doing in mass metering to ensure that all homes are properly metered, people get their regular electricity, and at the same time, they enjoy good electricity. We've done more for even the creative industries, where we predominantly have the youth, is in music, is in theater, is in fashion design, or is in IT infrastructure. We have done some work also there. So we can only say that we will do more.
During the week, I also had a virtual interview with a senior lecturer of economics and agribusiness at the Pan-Atlantic University, Dr. Ikechukwu Kelikume, on Nigeria's exit from recession in the last quarter of 2020. Dr. Kelikume Ikechukwu, many thanks for joining us on the program today.
Thank you too for having me.
Now, Nigeria's economic rebound in the last quarter of 2020 surprised many. But taking into account predictions that have gone ahead, like what we had from the CBN governor, was this really unexpected?
I think you need to look at it in the context of what kind of cycle, what kind of business cycle hit Nigeria in 2020. It was an abnormal cycle. It was a COVID-19 motivated cycle. Now, the previous recessions that we have had as a nation was actually motivated by oil cycle, falling crude oil price. And every time you find oil price crashing in international markets, Nigeria is hit directly. So if you look at the 2015-2016 economic crisis, it was oil price that actually led to that recession where we had 5-quarter negative growth in output. But for this case, it was actually COVID-19 and it affected the entire world. If you look at the data published by World Bank, you could easily see that all the major advanced countries were hit. In fact, they all entered into recession as at Q2 2020. But again, when you look at the dynamics with the vaccines coming out of vaccines and in Q3 2020, all these economics started pulling out. There was this positive optimism across countries that all these countries started pulling out of crisis. And it is not unexpected when you look at what has happened to Nigeria, because oil price started trajecting upwards. As of today, we're looking at $65 per barrel. So it's actually clear indication that oil is moving us again out of the woods.
All right, let me take you to the efforts of the Central Bank of Nigeria last year, especially during the COVID pandemic when it was at its peak in the country. There were several initiatives from the CBN to cushion the effect of COVID-19 on households, on small businesses. So, what do you think the impact of that uh, is on the GDP?
It's actually difficult to say the impact of COVID-19 on our economy because we have more we have more unreported cases. If you look at the total number of deaths today, it is so low, meaning that we have very, very, very low reported cases. There are many cases out there that was actually not reported. So it's difficult to tell how COVID-19 affected us individually in terms of the number of lives that have been lost.
Now, before I let you go, I would like you to just wrap up by telling us what efforts must be intensified specifically to ensure economic growth.
Now, for you to grow, there's a difference between economic growth and economic development. A nation can actually be growing without developing. It's so possible for a nation to be posting positive growth and not developing. So development is an all-embracing word because it includes infrastructure, it includes education, it includes wellness, it includes health, it includes housing, it includes security of properties and life. So if you speak to, oh, we are growing our economy by 0.11%, oh, we are out of the wood, we are out of recession. But when you look at the reality is that more persons have been displaced. More persons have been displaced. More persons cannot buy basic needs. More of our citizens cannot fend for themselves. Unemployment is high, social wellness is low. Now, all of this speaks to development. So for you to grow an equitable economy and for you to grow the economy in the positive light, you need to bring in development indicators. You need to manage the security and well-being and the life of the people. So the critical factor that will put Nigeria back on the limelight is that government addresses the security issues that is currently hitting the country. One of my pastime jobs is farming. Like I introduced myself as the program director of LBS Agribusiness Program. I have a farm, but the last time I went to the farm, I could not access my farm. I was told not to enter, that I will be kidnapped. So government need to address banditry, government need to address insecurity, government need to, yes, government has done so well in terms of our infrastructure. We now have very good roads. If you look at the South-South roads, they are a bit better than the previous government. But then these roads are roads that people are scared to actually drive their cars on those roads because of security issues. So government need to address security. If we can address security and people can go to sleep, then we probably will say, yes, the economy is doing fine in terms of posting positive growth.
All right. I wouldn't have needed to ask this question because that was meant to be the final. But because of what you said, and I want us to clarify something, 0.11% GDP growth in the last quarter of last year as Nigeria exited recession.
So recession is where you have a negative 2 to 3 quarter growth in output. So when you look at the data, it speaks volume that we hit 2 period negative growth in output, meaning we entered recession. If we had entered a 3 period negative growth, we probably would have said, yes, we are neck deep in recession. But coming out with a 0.11% growth shows that we are out of recession. We are clearly out of recession. And when you look at the trends, the relationship between crude oil price and GDP growth. In the past, when oil cycle begins, when oil is down at the base level, the economy goes down further. Today, oil price is up, even though production is low and export is low, but oil price is up. A clear indication that first quarter 2021 GDP will be positive. It means we are out of recession.
All right, we will leave it there for now. Dr. Ikechukwu Kelikume, many thanks for your time on the program.
Thank you very much too, Yemisi.
Up until a few years ago, Nigeria produced far less than it consumed, spending up to $22 billion annually on importation. Then came the import policy by the federal government. Now, to survive, the nation must learn to be self-sufficient. And so far, we are on the verge of achieving this through the intervention of the Central Bank of Nigeria and other stakeholders in support of local farmers and efforts of value chain entrepreneurs. Now, the goal of creating 10 million jobs in 5 years through 10 commodities is gradually being actualized. Let's buy Nigerian to grow Nigeria.
Welcome back. The CBN Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, in the company of other top-ranking officers of the bank on Tuesday, paid a visit to the National Assembly on the invitation of the Senate, who wanted to understand the reason behind the decision to prohibit banks and others from getting involved in cryptocurrency transactions. Emefiele said the Apex Bank did so in the interest of the depositors and to protect the country's financial system stability. We have details in this report. Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, arrives at the National Assembly to honor the invitation by the Senate Joint Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, including ICT and Cybercrime. The Senate Joint Committee wants to be briefed on the opportunities and threats of cryptocurrency to Nigeria's economy. This follows a motion by Senator Stephanos Gyang during a plenary on 11th February on the CBN's directive reminding financial institutions not to get involved in cryptocurrency transactions and matters arising thereof. In his presentation, Emefiele explains that the bank's decision to prohibit deposit money banks, non-banking institutions, and other financial institutions from facilitating trading and dealings in cryptocurrency is in the best interest of Nigerian depositors and the country's financial system.
cryptocurrency is used to describe the activities of players in an electronic dark world, where transactions are extremely opaque, they are black, they are not white, they are not visible, and they are not transparent. In another parlance, these are people who deal in transactions that not only do not want a trail, but indeed, by its nature, cannot be trailed. I'm sure that these definitions alone are scary enough to create anxiety for any regulator or central bank or Fed in any part of the world, and that is the reason virtually all regulators in the world do not recognize it. Let me state that this decision is in the best interest of every well-meaning Nigerian who has nothing to hide and is happy to have traceable and transparent dealings in our financial system. As many of you may have heard, even the International Monetary Fund, the US, the United Kingdom, Europe, agrees with us and highlighted that a vast majority of central banks around the world have taken the same position as we have done here in Nigeria. I'd therefore like to ask for everyone's patience and understanding as we continue to monitor this space and get a better understanding that enables us to keep protecting our depositors, facilitating loans, and safeguarding our financial system for the good of Nigeria and Nigerians.
He stresses that the bank's actions would not in any way hinder the development of fintech or a technology-driven payment system. The Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Mr. Lamido Yuguda, who is also here on the invitation of the Senate, clarifies that there is no policy contradiction between the directive of the central bank and the pronouncements of SEC on the subject of cryptocurrencies in Nigeria.
Based on the recommendations of the Blockchain Committee and findings from other studies and engagements, the SEC released its statement on digital assets and their classification and treatment in September 2020. In recognition of the fact that certain digital assets may have the full characteristics of investments as defined in the Investment and Securities Act of 2007, the SEC statement asserts that trading in such assets falls under such regulatory purview, except where proven otherwise. This was in line with Section 13 of the ISA 2007, which confers powers on the SEC to regulate investments and securities business in Nigeria. The primary objective of the statement was not to hinder or stifle innovation, but to establish standards of ethical practices that ultimately make for a fair and efficient securities market. To address the perception by some that there are policy conflicts in the two regulatory pronouncements by the CBN and the SEC reiterates that there are no policy contradictions or inconsistencies.
Also, the chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, Professor Balaji Owasonye, informs the Senate that there are serious legal and law enforcement risks for Nigeria due to the opaque nature of cryptocurrencies.
So what is the legal status of cryptocurrencies? The India Supreme Court has had cause to look at this issue and came to the conclusion that we don't know what it is. We cannot classify it. And if you cannot classify something, how do you protect those who inevitably will suffer from it sooner or later? Are they amenable to Ponzi schemes? What are the law enforcement challenges to tracking them and linking them to corruption? I can say that in ICPC we have a few cases that are actually linked to cryptocurrency. And the major one, we have not found the role play up to now.
Chairman of this Joint Senate Committee, Senator Oba Sani, says the committee had no preemptive recommendation or stand and would make its position on the matter known soon. That's a package from the CBN this week. Remember, the economic intervention schemes of the CBN are also for you. Talk to your bank or visit the website www.cbn.gov.ng to find out more. Call the CBN contact center using the phone line below for your valid complaints. Local call rates may apply. Send in your comments and contributions to the email address fromthecbn@gmail.com. Follow us on the social media for updates and uploaded episodes of the program. I'm William Misidada. Keep staying safe and bye for now.